Hello, sinners. I just wanted to drop in and tell you that My Horror Confessional is now part of the Ghoulish Podcast Network. In addition to producing podcasts, Ghoulish is also a publisher. Ghoulish Books has published dozens of horror books that have gone on to receive award recognition and even film adaptation treatments. Browse their spooky offerings over at ghoulish.rip and use discount code CONFESSIONAL for 10% off your order. And remember, ghouls, live spooky, die spooky. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I'll have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe that they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today we have a returning guest, Rhonda Jackson Garcia, aka RJ Joseph. RJ is an award-winning Stoker Award and Shirley Jackson Award nominated Texas-based academic and creative writer, professor, editor whose writing regularly focuses on the intersections of gender and race in the horror and romance genres and popular culture. She has had works published in various applauded venues. Rhonda is also an instructor at the Speculative Fiction Academy and the co-host of the Genre Blackademia podcast. She's also working with Raw Dog Screaming Press, editing a new novella line. The selected papers for the study of wow, I cannot say this word. Anomalous phenomena?
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
The selected papers for the study of anomalous phenomena. What is this? Rhonda, what kind of witchcraft do you have me doing this on a Sunday morning on daylight saving time? One more time. The selected papers for the study of anomalous phenomena. There we go. She
Yes.
occasionally peeks out online through social media from at R Jackson Joseph or on her website, rhondajacksonjoseph.com. RJ, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Yes, and I go back and forth to calling you Rhonda and RJ, so I apologize.
Yeah, it's fine. It's
Yeah,
I am every
you are the
woman.
thing. Yeah, you
A
are.
la Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan, Shaka Khan.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being back. I appreciate it. Rhonda was on previously to talk Chopping Mall with me from 1986. And we had an absolute blast with that one. You guys should go back and listen to it. I must have done something right because she's back again to talk about another 80s movie, Alone in the Dark from 1982, the year I was born. So before we get into talking about that movie, how have you been?
I've been good. I've
Yeah.
been good. Yeah. Excited it's spring break. Oh my gosh. I've
Yeah.
been
Oh,
ready
yeah.
for this.
Yes,
All
definitely.
semester, I've been ready for this one week.
And you're actually coming up. So this is going to come out after the Ghoulish Book Festival. That's on me. I didn't schedule it right, but Rhonda is scheduled to be one of the three Ghouls of Honor at Ghoulish Book Festival. So congratulations on
Yes.
that.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. Yeah, oh my gosh, I just love Max and Lori and everything they've done. This whole Texas horror thing, like it's a real beast and I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. This is the third year of it. So I can't wait for it. I'm excited to see you. It's like camp, like
It
coming,
is. It really is.
yeah, coming together and seeing a bunch of people. Some faces unfortunately aren't going to be there this year, which we'll miss them dearly. But yeah, I mean, seeing you and everybody else who comes out is just amazing, and looking forward to meeting some new faces and getting to see some familiar ones. So you what what are you currently working on?
Oh gosh, I'm always working on a whole bunch of stuff. Uh, but right now, at this moment, I'm finally finishing that splatter western that I've been writing. It seems like for years already.
Yeah,
And of course, I have a whole other collection already ready to go.
because of course you do.
Yes, of course. And then this week specifically, I'm gonna work some more on outlining a nonfiction book about Black folk horror.
Black folk horror.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
was it
And
a fiction or was it movie based? I'm sorry, I didn't
it,
catch that.
oh yeah, it's nonfiction and it's gonna
Nonfiction.
be basically but it's gonna be mostly based on movies because we don't have a ton. Although I have read a couple here lately, I do think that I might be able to branch off into some literary studies too. But like it's
Yeah.
kind of that double entendre, Black folk horror and then Black folks horror, right? So it's
Oh,
like
okay,
kind
I
of
got you.
that line where they
I
intersect.
love that. I love that so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
That
I
is,
think it's fun. It's fun so far, right?
mhm. I cannot wait to see that. I cannot wait to read that. That's going to be amazing.
Thank you.
So the last time we talked, we talked a bit about your background. So we have that. So my question to you, so Chopping Mall was a bit so freaking weird. Oh, the reason I was gonna tell you that. So Chopping Mall was directed by what's his name? Jim Wynorski. I don't expect you to
Hmm.
remember that name, but so I'm getting ready for Ghoulish Book Festival. Like I have a brand new comic that I'm gonna be dropping there, and so like
Oh,
if
nice.
yeah, if you're familiar with comics, you like I bought bags and boards for them, so they're nice when people buy them.
Hmm.
And when I so while I was doing that, I put something on in the background to just be brainless, not have to think about anything. And I
Hmm.
went to Shutter because I haven't used it in a while, and I was like, I'm paying for it. Let me use it. So there's
Yeah.
these two movies called Death Stalker 1 and Death Stalker 2. And it's
Uh-huh.
like sword and sorcery stuff, like Conan stuff, which is not my jam at all. Like I like some of
Uh-huh.
it. I've read some, but it's really not my jam. But I was like, okay, I can just have something on in the background. So I put on the first one, boring, whatever. But I put on, but they're like 70 minutes. I was like, yeah, why not?
Hmm. Hmm.
Put on
Yeah, why not?
the second one, Deathstalker 2. It's called Duel of the Titans, which came out like 5 years later. And I was watching and I was like, this feels a lot different. Come to find out that it was directed by Jim Wynorski, who directed Chopping Mall, and the
Huh?
leading man in it is John Terlesky. Now, if you remember from Chopping Mall, John Terlesky was Mike. He was the guy who was always chewing gum,
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
like chewing up the space, like all that. Like it was him, like he was like and always smiling. It was really charming. Well, he was a year later, he starred in Death Stalker 2, directed by Jim Wynorski. And I had so much fun with it. It was like ridiculous and campy. So it's like breaking the fourth wall sort of thing. It felt
Uh-huh,
almost
uh-huh.
yeah, anyway, we're not here to talk about Death Stalker, but I just thought when you and I were talking before the show about Chopping Mall, I was like, oh yeah, I just saw Death Stalker. So if anybody's listening, you don't need to watch Death Stalker 1. It's really rapey. Really,
Oh,
the treatment
yeah.
of women is nasty. Death Stalker 2 is a little bit of it, but they they play up a lot of stuff for laughs and it's a lot funnier. So Death Stalker 2. But so you're here to confess your sin of never having watched Alone in the Dark from 1982. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's like I asked you with Chopping Mall, what is your story behind this? Had you never heard of it? Because honestly, for me, I had never heard of it until fairly recently, and when I added it onto the list. But is this one that you'd heard of and hadn't watched, or you just never heard of it?
No, I never heard of this movie. It makes sense that I wouldn't have heard of it like when it was first run. I mean, I was like 11. I wouldn't have been allowed to watch it anyway.
Right.
But the fact that I didn't hear about it after is really surprising to me.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially like when we look at the cast, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it's kind of for a B kind of horror movie, it's got a pretty big cast or a pretty
Uh,
star-studded cast. you
It
know?
does. Yes.
And so with for me, I had seen the cover of the movie. The cover is very kind of iconic, but
Hmm.
also at the same time has nothing to do with the movie at all.
Right.
So for you guys who aren't familiar, Alone in the Dark, the poster, there's like a man. You almost feel like he's got Jason vibes, right? And we'll talk a little bit about the connection between Jason in a second. But it's like a man alone in the woods, and all you see is like the lower half of like his leg, and he's holding a axe. And then it's like there's forest, and then there's a moon, but there's no axe used in the movie at all. So
Right.
it's just, you know, it's one of those things. But I remember the cover from when I was a kid. I just forgot about it. So this is kind of like a slasher. Yeah, I would say it's kind of a slasher. What would you what is your background with slashers? Like do you is it one of your genres that you like?
Yeah, it is. I do. I like all of
Yeah,
that.
nice. Okay. So let's go in and start. Oh, actually, first of all, I apologize. Rhonda, can you let everybody know where they could follow you and how they can support you, how they can buy your books, all that stuff, where they can listen to you, all that.
Yeah, well, I finally have a website. Like I think last time we
Yeah.
talked, I didn't have
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Yeah,
As
yeah.
as long as I've been writing, I just never had one. But I have one now. It is rhondajacksonjoseph.com. And I'm usually haunting most of the social media platforms from behind at R Jackson Joseph. So I'm kind of around staking out real estate, even if I don't use the places a whole bunch.
Have you been on have you done Threads yet?
I have done threads a little bit.
What do you
Uh,
think? I haven't gone on there yet. I don't even know
it's
what it
well
looks like.
the thing that's hard to get used to is that it was like a lot of people are still creating accounts, and so all of a sudden I'll get this thing that goes, oh, you're now following this person because I guess they were in my Instagram list
Yeah,
already. So that's a little bit weird because I go, I haven't even gone in threads, I haven't followed anybody, so I had to keep reminding myself that that just happens when they finally join. That means they weren't a member before,
right.
and I'm going, oh, okay, well that's interesting. I think that it's easy enough to follow. Um, so I don't think that it's different enough that I could just say, oh yeah, hey, everybody go to threads.
Right. Yeah, like I have abandoned Twitter. I really just use Instagram now.
Uh-huh,
And but I
uh-huh.
know like I know I gotta go somewhere else, was like I just don't have the freaking energy to do it,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
I abandoned Facebook years ago, like at the pandemic, or probably before that.
Uh-huh.
Twitter like last year, and like so now it's just Instagram. And I know I'm just not getting the reach that I need to with just Instagram,
Hmm,
but
hmm.
yeah, like I said, I don't have the energy for it. I just don't.
It's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah, it's a whole lot to do. I mean, I only have these accounts because Brian Keene, writer extraordinaire, godfather of horror, right? He suggested that, and I thought he would never steer us wrong. He said, "Go stake out the claims, even if you think you're never going to use them, because you don't know if you're going to use it, right?" And I thought that's brilliant. I'll just do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I should go out there. There was one. I should go out there at least get my name. I know I have like Blue Sky did that once, but
Hmm, hmm.
I didn't. I didn't follow up with it at all.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a lot. It's a lot to juggle.
yeah. So okay, so let's start talking about this one, Alone in the Dark, 1982, directed by Jack Shoulder, who did Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and he also did a movie called The Hidden, which is really a lot of fun. It stars, oh man, what is his name from Twin Peaks? The main guy in Twin Peaks. I forget his name, but anyway, he's in it as well. It's fun. It was written by Jack Shoulder, Robert Shea, and Michael Harpster. Michael Harpster, this
Hmm.
is the only thing he ever did. Jack Shoulder, obviously the director, he wrote some things, and then Robert Shea. Are you familiar with Robert Shea, the name at all?
No, except that I think he was involved in this movie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was all like, I just saw his name.
Yeah, well, he produced all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. He
Uh-huh.
is the
Okay.
owner of New Line Cinema. And so, like, yeah, he created New Line Cinema, and I'll go over in a bit, but Alone in the Dark was the first movie that New Line Cinema ever made. So
Oh.
he was
Cool.
before just a distributor, and then
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to branch off into making movies. So that's where this started. So
Oh, that's
uh
cool.
yeah, it is really cool. So this was starring Jack Palance as Frank Hawks, who most people my age would probably recognize him as Curly from the City Slickers, for which he won an Oscar. He won an Academy Award for that role.
Uh-huh.
He was kind of a huge actor in his day, like a big time actor. Were you familiar with Jack Palance at all?
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in the household where my grandparents watched all these movies and mama watches all these. I'm an old movie kid, so
Yeah,
I've seen him in tons of stuff.
yeah. Of course, Donald Pleasance as Dr. Leo Bain, obviously Halloween series 1 through 5, no 1 through 6, except for 3. Obviously Prince of Darkness. He was in that, just a horror legend. We absolutely love him. He was in some
Mhm.
Bond movies as well, too. Like he had a whole career before Halloween as just like a character, a really cool character actor. Rest in peace, Donald Pleasance. And then Dwight Schultz as Dr. Dan Potter. Um, Dwight Schultz is a huge voice actor now. He has tons of roles in animation and video games. Not so much in the
Mhm.
acting sphere, but in the voice actor role. And then it's starting Gordon Watkins as Detective Burnett, and we're going to talk about him when we get to that character. Really disappointed
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
with him, but this was his only credit ever. No other credits, not even like producing or directing or writing, just one acting credit, and
Mhm.
this was it. And then also starring Brent Jennings as Ray Curtis. He was Ray Curtis was also, I'm sorry, Brent Jennings was also in Moneyball, The Newsroom, Modern Family, and Insecure. Like he's got a big TV career. And then Martin Landau as Byron Preacher Sutcliffe. Martin Landau, again, another like old school big name, but he was in Ed Wood, where he played Bela Lugosi. He was in North by Northwest by Alfred Hitchcock, just a tons of stuff. And then just a couple other people I wanted to name: Deborah Hedwall as Nell Potter, Lee Taylor Allen as Tony Potter. We have Erland Lith as Ronald Fatty Elster, or Elster. Sorry, Elster. He played Dynamo in The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you ever saw that, he was Dynamo in it.
Mhm.
Just saw it for the first time last year. Philip Clark as Tom Smith, and I won't say who else that he played. And then Lynn Shay as the receptionist at Haven. Now you'll
Mhm.
see Lynn Shay and Robert Shay, obviously their brother and sister, but do you recognize Lynn Shay here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's the insidious lady, but she also
Yes.
played in a couple of other horror things I just couldn't place. But she's like the horror lady.
Yeah, she is huge. She's like, I wouldn't say she, uh final girl, final lady, because I don't see her as that. I just see her
Hmm.
as like a huge name in horror. But yeah,
Yeah,
she's been in tons of
exactly.
stuff. But she was also in something about, was it something about Mary? Uh
Yes, yes, yes. That
yeah,
is yes. She was.
the
Uh-huh.
older, quote unquote older lady, like the
Yeah.
leather skates, leather
Oh my gosh,
in the face
that was
lady.
hilarious.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I was going to say: that Alone in the Dark was the first film produced by New Line Cinema, which had previously been exclusively a film distribution company. According to the director, Jack Scholler, he had listened to New Line founder Robert Shea mull over the idea of getting into production of low budget horror films, and he pitched him the idea of a group of criminally insane guys escaping from a mental hospital during a blackout in New York City and creating mayhem and then getting rounded up by the mafia. He's citing a New York City blackout he had experienced several years prior as an inspiration. The script was considered too expensive to produce, so it was rewritten as a home invasion thriller without the mafia angle. And while New Line Cinema raised money for the film, the director Jack Shoulder went on to work as the editor for the 1981 slasher The Burning, which I did with my friend Stanley early on in the series. So if you want to hear that one, go for the listeners, you can listen to that one. And he credits his time on the Burning with helping him learn about building scares and how to build suspense and tension. So this is his debut film as well. So that was 1981 or 82 is when this movie came out, and 2 years later we would get Nightmare on Elm Street, and the whole horror world would be changed forever after. Um, so getting and starting talking about the movie, the movie starts and a man named Preacher walks into this mom's diner on a very snowy evening. And I've said this before, I forget what movie it was on, but it's great sound design on the snow and the howling wind. Like I'm from
Hmm.
Chicago, and my wife and I moved down here to get away from the cold after over 30 years of it. And so when I hear it now and it's done really well in sound design, I get chills. I'm like, oh, fuck, that's really good. Really good stuff. Have you, are you I think you're a Southern lady, right? Southern woman. You're
Yes,
born, okay.
yeah, I'm a Southern woman. That's snow. I have no knowledge of any of that. That's
Okay.
scary to me.
Okay. All right. So but when I hear it, I really like it. And then also I was gonna say that the diner, Mom's Diner, actually looks like an old railroad car diner,
Hmm. Hmm.
which those are popular in the 40s and the 50s and such. I actually was in one. We ate there for lunch when my wife and I went to Salem last year for our anniversary. And just
Hmm.
outside of Salem, there was this diner that was in a railroad car. And I was like, oh, we got to go there to eat. And it was a lot of fun, but it was as cramped as you would imagine it would be.
Mm.
Have you ever eaten in one of
Wow.
those?
I haven't, no,
Yeah.
but I mean, it sounds like something that you just got to do when you can, right? I'm glad you had a chance to do that.
Yeah, it was like one of those quintessential like American experiences, you know.
Uh-huh.
It was kind of cool. So Preacher sits at the counter and orders the usual. The waitress doesn't seem so pleased to see him, and she's like looking at him really weird. You notice that as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so she takes the ticket to the kitchen, and we see in the kitchen that there's a huge fire in there.
Uh-huh.
And knowing now what we know about him, he's a bit of a firebug, right? Does that make
Yes.
sense? So then the waitress brings the quote unquote the usual to him, and it's basically a really nasty looking fish, uncooked,
Hmm.
on a
Uncooked.
platter, is brought to him. And then a frog plops down right in front of him. And then we see the chef played, who this is Dr. Loomis. Oh, I mean, Leo Bain. This is Leo
Uh-huh.
Bain. No beard. Did you notice this? Like, I was like, why does he look so weird? And it's like, oh, it's because he doesn't have a
Yeah.
beard in there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's crazy how facial hair, I mean, it
You
literally is a
will,
whole mask.
yeah, that's,
It can be a mask. Yeah.
I mean, I'm feeling it now. I shaved my mustache off, my beard off, and just have a
Uh-huh.
mustache on.
Uh-huh.
As, yeah, yeah, you notice that right away.
Yeah.
And I feel really weird about it, but myself and friends of the show, Zach Chapman and Andrew Hilbert, we're growing them out for Ghoulish Book Festival, which is happening in
Okay.
San Antonio in on this weekend. And what is it, the 14th, 15th, 16th, or something like that?
Uh-huh.
And
Something like that. Yeah.
yeah, and I have the worst mustache of us all. Uh, Andrew has the most amazing mustache, and Zach actually has a better one. But this is what I have to work with, RJ. I'm sorry, but this is what I got. But when you say that it's basically a mask, yes, completely, because I do not
Yes.
feel like myself at all with this on. I used to have I had a beard for like 15 years or something like that, you know. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it works. And my husband is doing the same thing. He's a driver. He's had to shave everything. He can only wear the light mustache, and he's kind of going, "Oh no!" But I mean, I'm like, but it's still you. Like, it's not all Clark Kent, right? I can still tell it's you, Miguel.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I noticed that he didn't have a beard, so it took him a little time to get used to it. But he comes out from the back and he begins talking to him. He says, I will cause distress unto men, for they have sinned against the Lord, and their blood shall run out as the dust, and their flesh as dung. Um, a couple times in the movie, the Bible is quoted. I,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This isn't, I don't know if this is the Bible. If it is, it's not one of the more like oft quoted lines from the Bible. But it's very weird to see that. And he's doing, even though he doesn't have the beard, he's really doing a Dr. Loomis like that,
Yes.
like just acting like crazy as the inmates sometimes, we'll see.
Uh-huh.
He's only removed 4 years from Halloween. It's been 4 years from Halloween and only
Mm.
like 1 year from Halloween 2, right? Because Halloween 2 came out in 81 and this one was 82.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's holding the most fake looking plastic shiny knife. Like, I come to find out later, this knife it has a specific name. Oh, it's called a cane knife, and it's for shucking. I don't know if shucking is the right word, but like, cane, like the rods of like cane where sugar comes from, like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
getting that out of that. So
mm-hmm.
why would a chef in a diner have that, right?
Right.
I think. Do you think perhaps that they were just trying to find an interesting looking weapon for him to have?
Probably, probably. But then there could have been something really meta there. I don't know about like taking off like the shuck or the outside part, getting to the inner inside. But I don't know that
Wow,
it was really that
wow.
deep. I don't know that it was really that deep.
You made it more deep than they ever could have. I
Right.
love it though. I love that. So suddenly it starts to thunder, lightning, there's wind and rain, like right inside the diner. And then, sorry, I missed where I'm at. Yeah, so what happens here is the waitress, or they're both kind of talking to him, and suddenly the preacher's hoisted up on chains, and the chef swings the cane knife down. So basically, he's hung up by his legs, and then the chef, who is Bane, we know, brings the knife down, or the butcher block or whatever it is, down on his groin, but it cuts out before that. And I was going to ask you, have you seen Terrifier?
You know, I try really hard to watch it, but I have not been able to literally just sit down and watch it all the way through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I'm not a fan of Terrifier, and I haven't seen Terrifier 2. And I know
Mm.
specific people, or people love it, and I can understand liking your own thing. I am not a fan of it at all. It felt, it was mean spirited and gratuitous and kind of gross, and I just it wasn't a fan. I
Yeah.
wasn't a fan. But there is so spoiler alert. Give me 20 seconds here. Do you mind if I won't go too
Yeah,
into
no, go ahead.
depth,
Yeah.
but there's a scene very similar to this where,
Hmm.
but it's a woman who's hung up like this,
Right,
and
right, right.
Art the clown
Yeah.
dispatches her in a way, but we see it. It's all very visceral,
Yes.
and so I
Yes.
was like, oh, so I want, they might have gotten inspiration from this, So
Maybe.
yeah, suddenly preacher wakes up in his bed and he screams. So this was all a nightmare. He's actually in an insane asylum, and then we get the title card, and then the music starts up, and it's pretty good. I like the soundtrack in the movie,
Hmm.
but I'm a sucker for 80s soundtrack and cheese and all that sort of stuff. One thing I should mention is that there's a lot of those it deals with people who are in mental health crises and people who are in patients in a mental health facility and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't do it in the best way. It's in 1982, right? So
Hmm.
there's a lot of there's
Hmm.
problematic stuff. I am not a mental health professional, and neither are you. I assume
Right.
so. I don't know the best terms for everything they use. I know psychopath
Sure.
isn't used anymore. They use it a lot in this movie. So
Yes, they
if
do.
yeah, if I slip up, I apologize. I'm not doing it on purpose or to belittle anybody. I just don't know. But I do know that it is problematic. Uh,
Yes,
yeah.
it is very much so.
So the next day we see Dr. Potter. I think it's Dan Potter, but I just call him Potter. It's easier.
Mm-hmm.
Potter arrives at the hospital, and there's some patients playing like croquet on the lawn. And Potter has come to see the director, Dr. Leo Bain. And Potter goes to the receptionist and asks for him, but she says, "You can't see him." And he's like, "Oh, because he isn't free. I'm late." She's like, No, he's free." She's like, "Well, why can't I see him?" And she says, "Because he's invisible." I was like, "Oh, they got me here on this. Did they get you?"
It was really funny, right? I mean, I was like, but I mean, you can't see him if he's invisible. So,
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of cute.
yeah. And so obviously this was played by Lynn Shay, and she's a patient here, not a receptionist. Um, Later, a worker by the name of Marissa tells him that Melody was her name, was a receptionist before she was admitted, so they just let her
Hmm.
play that role.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and you come to find out that Leo Baines, the doctor Leo Baines, kind of lets them run the show a bit, like just do
Yeah,
whatever they want mostly.
yeah, yeah.
It's uh it's different from other portrayals of doctors in psychiatric facilities, who are usually they're all mad and they're experimenting on their people and they're really
Hmm.
mean.
Hmm.
So that's kind of refreshing, you
That
know?
was very refreshing. I think that was one of the things that was done very, very well. As far as with when talking about people that suffer from mental illnesses, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That
Yeah,
he treats them as voyagers, and I mean,
right.
I was really digging that. I was digging that whole thing.
Yeah. So then Marissa tells him that his the Bane's methods are bizarre, but they work. And
Hmm.
so they walk into his office, and we see that it's the chef from The Nightmare, but it's actually Dr. Baines. And she
Uh-huh.
introduces them, and Bane like hugs him, even though they have never met. And I guess this whole time I was like, oh, he's gonna end up being a villain. There's gonna be some turn. Were you expecting that at all, or were you just kind of like seeing what
At
for
that
what it was?
point, Well, at that point, I thought that the doctor was actually one of the Voyagers also,
Yeah.
uh, or either Potter was. I was like, okay, wait, this is one of those you didn't know that you were actually placed in this place also
Oh.
kind of things. So that's what I was expecting. I was like, oh, that didn't go where I thought it was going at all.
Well, there is a twist in the movie. We'll get to that, but that wasn't a twist.
Yes.
But that's a pretty good twist. Like to see that if it was Potter to be, that would have been like one of the inmates
Yeah.
or
Yeah, I really
patients. Yeah.
expected that. Yes, I really expected that because there was one point where they said something about, well, you have to be, uh, I think crazy. You have to be crazy to work with. There was something weird. I want to say maybe his
Yeah.
wife said that or something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think I have that written down as well. So then he asks Potter what he's experiencing right now, but Potter's only just arrived, so he's really just getting used to it. He does then relay the story of Melody and tells him what happened. And Dr. Bain says to him, well, to her, I am invisible. So I like that he's
Mhm.
understanding that he's believing her
Yes.
in, or he's
Yes.
believing their patients, you know. It's
Yes.
compassion.
Yes. Yeah, that was wonderful. That was I can see why his tactics were effective.
Yeah. So at home later, Potter is moving things into his new house with his wife, Nell, and their 11-year-old daughter, Lila. And Lila is something else. She
She
is,
is something. She's a whole mess.
yeah, she's a little too like old for her age or something. I don't know. But Nell says that Bane is apparently just as crazy as most of the patients at the hospital, like you were saying. And that's the way to be a good shrink. So then they're unpacking and they see this broken vase. And Lila's like, oh, god damn. I was like, excuse me? I don't know. I expect to hear like swear words or something like that, but
Uh-huh,
goddamn
uh-huh.
from a little girl, it's like, oh, okay. I like it.
Yeah, she was very well, she was really precocious,
That's a
like
good word
you
for her,
see a
yeah.
lot of times in the movies, the kids are either very, very good or very, very terrible. But the reality is a lot of kids are like Layla. They're just, they soak up the world around them anyway,
Mhm. And so Potter's like, oh, I can fix this broken vase. But she says, make sure to use epoxy, not glue, not crazy glue, because you can get it stuck to your fingers. And he's like, oh, where'd you read about that? And she's like, the National Enquirer. And she's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
why are you reading those magazines? And then she runs off. It's such a, first of all,
Uh-huh.
National Enquirer is such an 80s magazine, but it's,
It totally is. Yeah, we read it. We had them at home. My daddy read them all the time, so we read them all the time.
yeah, yeah. I read them in the line at the grocery store. We never bought those,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
but yeah, and they're still around. It's just tabloid rags, stuff like that. But it's funny to think of a little girl reading that.
Yeah, yeah. There are some of us in the world. Yeah.
So then his wife Nell asks about the guys on the third floor, and he says, "Well, they seem like a rough bunch of people, but we don't really know yet who they're talking about." That night at the hospital, one of the patients, Frank Hawks, gets up out of bed and he walks to the window and he places his hands near a window, which causes the gate to shut down, an alarm to go off. And this, for me, seems very dangerous. Like, what if somebody's just sleepwalking or just like this could have chopped somebody's arm or fingers off?
Hmm.
And I was for certain that this was going to come back in a bloody way, and it didn't. And I was kind of disappointed there.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it gave a lot of insight into Hawks's character, though, like as the one that's probably going to be trying to push the boundaries all the time, and trying to test everything all the time. So I was glad that it was him that was doing that. Had it been another character, I don't think that it would have actually come back to mind. But later in the movie, it came to mind for me, and I was like, it would be him. It would
Yeah,
be him doing that.
yeah, that's true. So the next day, Dr. Potter arrives back at the hospital to meet with Dr. Bain. Dr. Bain is going to introduce him to the third floor patients, whom Bain calls the Voyagers. So they walk up the stairs and they pass a doorway, and there's someone just looking at them from like a cracked door. And I thought that was pretty creepy. And
It was.
yeah. And the movie is kind of good at building suspense, especially at the end scene. There's some pretty good
Mhm.
suspense in here, which I always appreciate, with along with some blood and gore. So Dr. Bain explains that the state required the patients on the floor to be in a maximum security facility, but he refused that because he said he's not running a jail. So instead, they installed the security system, which we saw earlier. There's no bars and it's all run on electricity. Potter asks, well, aren't they still violent? He says, well, they've passed that point on their journey. I'm like, I don't know if you're if you're the one to say that, like, I don't know if anybody's past that part of their journey. I don't know.
Right, right.
But I thought, okay, it's all run on electricity. Uh, something bad's gonna happen here. Um, I didn't even look at a trailer for this movie or anything like that, so I didn't know it was gonna be like a home invasion sort of thing. I thought it was gonna
Mm-hmm.
be where everything was gonna be at the mental facility, at the
Mm,
facility. So
mm-hmm.
I was expecting something different. What were you expecting? Did you see the trailer, or did you know it was going to be a
Yeah, no,
okay?
no, I went straight in and I was like, oh no. Well, I thought that at the least there would be things happening here at the hospital, right? I'm like, they're
Yeah,
already here. So yeah, it's gotta be a lot of mayhem that's gonna go on.
yeah. So then we meet Ray Curtis. He's the lead orderly, and Ray seems really like a bit worried and like anxious. He's always looking around his shoulder.
Hmm.
And but one of the things that I wish we would have gotten more on this character, on Ray,
Hmm.
because it seems like he is distrustful of the patients, which is understandable.
Hmm.
They're there for a reason. I understand that. He seems a lot of times to be the only administrative person on the floor, so
Hmm.
he's by himself. But like their animosity towards him is never really explained. It's not like he's a Nurse Ratchet character,
Hmm. Hmm.
or if he is, they don't show it. So I was wishing that they gave him more.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Of course I'm thinking, well, there's a black guy and he's probably gonna like, something's gonna maybe happen, but I don't know. Uh I wanted something else because his character seemed to be a really big allegory for like, a black man in the world, right? Or in this country. I think they mentioned that he's like a Somalian, he was from Somalia, maybe. Um,
Oh, I didn't catch that. They might have. I
or
just didn't
yeah,
catch it.
there was something, and so I thought maybe he kind of seen some wartime, or and then come to this country and then saw more war, like more socially, and
Oh
so. But
yeah,
I never understood why they were so why they were so bothered by him,
yeah,
except that he was. I guess maybe they saw him as their captor, but even so, I'm like, but he was also captive, like so.
right.
He's literally one of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wish more for this character, and
Yeah.
and the a lot of people die in the movie, right? But like this is one of the tropes where like the black guy always dies first, sort of
Sure.
thing. We'll see that later on in the movie. But I had a question for you. Technically, in his dream, Preacher dies, but we
Uh-huh.
cut away to it. We cut away from it because
Uh-huh.
he wakes up. So does that count as a death, or does Ray's death count as the first death in the movie? I didn't know. I didn't know how I felt about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think we could. I see your point though, and that does beg the question. I think that since they cut off screen and he woke up, then maybe since he woke up before it happened, we could say maybe it didn't happen.
Yeah, there you go. All right. See, I just
Maybe we
needed
could
to
do
talk
that.
it out. Just needed to talk it out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Okay. So then Dr. Bain introduces Potter to the patients, and they ask immediately. I think it's Fatty asks about. Sorry, Elster. I'm gonna call him Fatty. Elster asks about their previous doctor, Dr. Melton. Dr. Bain says that Dr. Melton left to help people elsewhere. And then they say, I doubt it. Or actually, I'm the one who says I doubt it. See, this is another thing. I was thinking that Bain was going to be like this evil doctor and
Uh-huh.
would have
Sure.
killed Dr. Melton, but that doesn't happen.
Right, right. Yeah. I think I was kind of misdirected too, because I thought that that might have been what put Potter there.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
why he had to go to the place and stuff.
So that we are introduced to the patients on the third floor. There's Ronald Fatty Elster, a 370-pound child molester and pedophile. There's Frank Hawks, a former World War II POW who went insane and was committed for fighting and nearly killing a few recent Vietnam War POWs out of anger and frustration. And the other is preacher Brian Sutcliffe, a former priest who was committed for setting fire to and burning down three churches, believing himself to be a messenger from God. And then there's John Skagg, aka the Bleeder, a murderer who was committed for strangling two women and who gets nosebleeds whenever he kills. Skagg refuses to show his face to anybody, including Potter. So I was like, oh, this is gonna come back later here. Um, but I'll have to admit, I give lots of movies shit for being, bad or um telegraphing stuff.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
They got me. They got me this one.
Yes, this was done very well. They got me too.
Even though they shouldn't have, and I should have known, but they got me. Like
Right,
it
they
was
got
so late. Like it happened so late in the movie that like you forget. You're like, there's no way they're gonna possibly introduce another person in literally the
exactly.
last 5 minutes, but they did. So they got me. So Potter tells the group that the previous doctor, Harry Merton, had to leave, but Hawks expresses suspicion and hostility towards Potter. And he yells out, Dr. Potter, happy trails. And then like he's like pointing at him and just like really holding back a lot of emotion. And then
Uh-huh.
Dr. Bain says, I hear you, Frank, which is again really compassionate that he
Mm-hmm.
hears his frustration. I wish you would have spent more time taking this delusion out of his head that Dr. Burton had been killed. That would have been
Mm-hmm.
helpful.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would have.
So that night, Hawks tells the others that he thinks Potter has killed Merton and believes that Potter intends to kill them. Preacher says, he that smiteth a man that he die shall surely be put to death. Again, quoting, I'm assuming that's got to be the Bible. Sounds like the Bible.
Sounds like
Uh,
it.
and then Elster says, we'll kill Potter when he comes back. But Hawks tells them no, that they must break out and somehow kill Potter. So the premise here of four escaped mental institution patients going on like this murdering rampage, like we always see one, right? Like I just did a movie
Mm-hmm.
last week with Jessica McHugh, Slumber Party Massacre, right? We did that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Meant that's a a mental patient escaping and going on a murderous rampage. So it's not new, but like four of them doing it, and each one having like a distinct. They're like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of mental health,
Yeah,
mentally insane people. It was kind of I liked the premise of that. That was really cool.
yeah, it was. Yeah, it gave them each their own specialty. That was cool. That was
Yeah.
great.
So in the morning, Nell asks for help picking up Dr. Potter's sister, Tony, but Potter says that he's basically too busy to bother, and to let her take a cab. So apparently, we find out that Tony had a mental breakdown, and he believes that she's better off now than when the whole thing happened. So he's now fixing that broken vase, and Lila is reading, and Nell basically says, "Oh, you better go get ready for school." And she's like, "Oh, when I'm done reading." It's like, child, child, child. Like, I like that you're reading. That's
Yeah.
cool.
However,
Yeah. Whomst do you think you're talking to?
yeah.
Yeah. But like you said, I like her. Is it precociousness? I like that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
She's used a bit for like, um, comedic effect.
Yes.
Even in like some of the like tense scenes when
Hmm.
it's kind of like out of place, they still use her, and we'll get to that. But I was like, oh, okay. She's the comedic relief.
Yes. And it works well
Yeah,
for her to be that. I mean, because she's already set up as this real character anyway, you know?
yeah. So in Bane's office, Bane tells Potter to kind of loosen up. He says, "You're not at your old place of work anymore. We don't lock them up and fry them with electricity." Then Bane
Mhm.
offers him a smoke, and he asks, "Do you mind?" He says, "No, not if you need to." And Bane says, "Need to? I don't need to. I want to." I thought that was
Uh-huh.
really interesting.
That was really interesting. I don't know if that's just the way the psychiatrists talk to each other. So I'm like, that was really weird to me. I was still thinking, oh, okay, need versus want.
Yeah.
What is that gonna play into? I don't know.
Well, I wonder if like Bane thought that Potter was perhaps judging him or something because like you
Sure,
needing a cigarette is like a sign of weakness and like, oh,
sure,
I don't
sure.
need
Kind of
this.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want
kind of
this.
diagnosing him. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like it was a little bit of that psychiatric kind of repartee, kind of that whole uh gosh, I don't know how to like when people are in competition, right? Sort of a playing the dozen psychiatric wise.
Yeah. I
Like,
love
yeah,
the
let's
idea of
meet
these
you.
two playing the dozens. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of it did seem like that. Yeah. They are
But
just
then
kind of one up in each other.
and so he busts out the bud and smells it and offers it to Potter to smell. And then he says it's Oregon Sinsemilla. I looked this up. I was like, what the hell is this? This is
Uh-huh.
cannabis. This is weed. It's
Yeah,
also
I
known
kind of
as,
figured.
yeah, it's also known as Sensimilla sensei or sensi. It's the female cannabis plant that has not been pollinated and therefore does not develop seeds, increasing the concentration of cannabinoids and terpenes. So this
Oh.
cultivation technique was developed in Sinaloa, Mexico in the 70s by the drug trafficker
Mhm.
Rafael Caro Quintero and consists of separating male plants as soon as they are known to be male in order to avoid pollination of the female pistils. The seeds are not useful for recreational purposes and require the plants to make a great expenditure of energy that could be invested in increasing the THC of the buds. So this is
Mhm.
some high level shit that he's smoking on.
Really? Yes.
Yes, that's sticky icky. No stems, no seeds, no sticks.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I had no idea that it was that powerful. Yeah, that that actually explains a lot.
He's just token up at work. Like he's like,
Exactly.
I run this. I could smoke this. You want some? I
Yes.
mean, that's a cool
And it's
that
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, sure. This is what we do.
It was at this point that I was like, okay, he is what he seems to be. He's just like a good dude who's trying to help these guys. And he's a
Uh-huh.
smoker. He's probably a former hippie. He's still token up at
Sure.
work. You know, I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Yeah, still a bit of a hippie. Like that's a really hippie concept. That
Yeah.
kind of we're all family, we're just voyaging, we're all on a trip here. That's hippie 101.
Well, like this guy, he's definitely taken acid. He's
Yes.
definitely taken LSD,
Yep.
mushrooms. Like
Yep.
there's a reason the way he for the way he is. And it's
Exactly.
yeah. So later, Ray meets with Potter and he kind of offers him some herbal tea. Potter refuses, and Ray seemed really offended. I didn't quite understand it, but I think this leads into the fact that he's just maybe a paranoid person or something.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I didn't think about that. I was thinking that the herbal tea was like more of the herb that Dr. Bane had.
Oh,
That's what I thought. And
yeah.
I think he was like, yeah, I don't want none of y'all's herb.
He's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Ray's like, I don't smoke it. I just drink it. Like, I was like, all right, okay. I like that.
Right. But I
So,
think, but it does set Potter up as being very, very paranoid. Like it does.
mhm. So Ray tells Potter that the four Voyagers think that Potter killed their last doctor, and now that they want to kill him. So he warns Potter that these guys are very intense and they're very dangerous. And he even ends up showing him the steel door in his office to protect himself from them.
Mm.
At this point, Preacher comes in and asks for a match from Dr. Potter. Dr. Potter refuses, and Preacher's like, well, Dr. Bain lets me have them all the time. And he's like, well, then go ask him, not me. I'm not giving you shit. So he gets immediately angry and starts shouting out Bible verses. He says, I will send my anger upon thee and judge thee according to thy ways and recompense upon thee all thy abominations. At this point, Preacher and Ray get into it, and Dr. Potter has to break them up. And then uh, Preacher says, the end is come, it watcheth for thee. I was like, damn, all that for a match? Dude,
It's just
chill.
a lie, but he was so preacher like, like I grew up Southern Baptist. He's so preacher like.
Yeah. Just
Like
was it
everything is a Bible verse, everything, every single thing.
just like hellfire and brimstone?
Exactly. All the time. Just all the
Yeah.
time. Just cause.
Outside in the gated courtyard where the patients all intermingle, Preacher goes and asks Dr. Bain for a match, which he gives him immediately. He's like,
Yep.
yeah, keep the whole pack. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
You're just arsonist who's in a mental institution,
Sure.
but here's a pack of matches. Go ahead and be unsupervised. So while I can understand Dr. Bain's like compassion, it is a bit irresponsible. It is extremely irresponsible of the way that he allows them to be unsupervised.
Yeah, that was. I kind of wondered about. At first, I thought he handed him an imaginary match, right? Because I didn't really see them.
Oh,
Like it happened so fast.
that would
But
have been
then,
funny. Yeah, that would have been good.
well, but then later, I was like, oh, that's really what we're doing here. Oh, I don't know that that's great for you to do. And it's like you're out. You're out here with all these trees and stuff. Like, did you think that was a great idea?
Yeah. So Baines is actually talking to a woman named Maeve who says her intestines come out of her body and strangle her, after which she has to say the Lord's Prayer 3 times or else her body turns into porcelain. Obviously, she's suffering from mental health. And Bane actually says to her, the next time that happens, just wave your hands in front of your face 3 times and you won't turn into porcelain. So I like that he's on her level and like
Mm-hmm.
is believing her and saying, oh, yeah, I understand that happens. Here's how you deal with it. Instead of saying,
Yes.
that is a delusion and you are wrong. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is the correct way to go about this. I'm not a mental health
Right.
professional, but
Right.
to me, it seems more compassionate.
It does. Well, to me too. I think that it's like it reminds me of things like working with toddlers. Not to say that grown-up adults are toddlers, but the fact is toddlers do have their own ideas. And I think that sometimes we have to lean into that so that they can develop those ideas or decide how they're gonna figure them out. Like I remember my kids I had a cousin who was unfortunately on drugs, and she came over to the house once, and she was complaining about a cup. She wanted something to drink, but she didn't want the cup that my sister gave her. And so I went in the kitchen and I said, "Well, give her a different cup, but make sure that it's a different color, also different color, different style,
Mhm.
because she's not crazy." She's gonna know if you just take this stuff, you just act like you changed the cup and you really didn't do it. And
Yeah.
then it worked. And my sister goes, how did you
Mhm.
know that? And I go, well, just because you have to acknowledge that these things are really happening. I do it with my kids all the time. This is really happening. You have to kind of get to the level, get to where they are and be compassionate.
Yeah.
Right. I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful way that he was talking with them and engaging with them. It's like I see you. I see you and I understand you. And maybe if you try this, this might work.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I feel like, yeah, that he is like really progressive, especially for this
Yes.
time. We're not too far away from like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and all that sort of stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the depiction of um, authority figures in mental health facilities hasn't always been the best, and I feel like they did a pretty good job here for Dr. Bain.
Yes, they did.
So lo and behold, but by everybody's surprised, literally nobody's surprised, that preacher has gone ahead and used the matches to set his coat on fire and is swinging it at people. So Dr. Potter runs over to try to stop him, but preacher only pushes him aside in anger. Dr. Bain walks up to preacher and whispers something in his ear, which calms him down. Bain tells Potter asks Dr. Bain what he said. And do you remember what he said here?
Yeah, he basically said, if you don't behave, I'm gonna cut you in half.
Exactly. He threatened to hoist him up and cut him in half every time he
Uh-huh.
misbehaves. Do you remember
Yes,
from this is
yes,
literally what we just saw in the beginning. So that
that
was a
is his,
great connection.
yes, that is his nightmare come to life.
I really appreciate that. But like,
Uh,
okay, we were just talking about being compassionate. And then to hear that this is what he tells him, it's like, uh, that's not the best thing to tell somebody, you know?
yeah, it was a really weird moment for me because I thought I didn't know if that meant that his compassion had a limit or if he really was still leaning into that whole, like the preacher would be very cognizant of things like punishment for bad behavior
Mm.
and wrath and things like that. So I mean, I don't know that it still wasn't compassionate on some level, maybe because this feeds into his whole persona, like his whole belief system. That's like as long as you're a good person, you won't get hoisted up and chopped in half. So as long as you know be good, and then everything will be fine. It just
Listen,
came across really harshly, though.
listen, if we have any mental health professionals that are listening and type
Yeah,
let me know on Instagram or whether or not that this was a good way to go because I don't think so. But
sure. It
but
was harsh.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And he even says sometimes you have to be forceful with them. So later in Potter's office, Elster sneaks in and finds a letter addressed to Potter and a framed picture of his family, Nell and Lila. At first, I didn't realize what was happening, but then, of course, they want Potter's address to go to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Here's my question for you, because we, are not too far off in age. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we know the world pre-GPS. We know the world when there was maps and getting lost
Yes.
and all that sort of stuff. What happens later? How do they get to his house? Like, did they stop and get a map? Were they stopping and asking for directions here? Like,
I did not. I could not figure that out. The only way I could even try to put it together was maybe it was a small town, and maybe it was a situation where the doctors live close to the facility, maybe, and
okay.
maybe you don't have to go that far. But I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, so you have this address, and what are you going to do with it? It's 1982. What are you going to do with
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Like, if you don't know somebody who lived there before could tell you how to get there, how the fuck are you getting there, you know?
How do you do that? How you get into it? So I don't know. I thought about it for a hot second, and I was like, maybe that's not important. But
Yeah.
yeah, there was no instant way to find that out at that time.
I remember, I'm gonna get off topic here a little bit, but I remember, I don't know, well, I have to have been out of high school, but this was before Google Maps, it was just MapQuest. You had to print out your
Uh-huh.
directions from MapQuest. I was terrible
Yes.
with a map, and I was in Chicago, and I had to get from Chicago to the suburbs. And for some reason, I had to go through, I forgot what expressway was right now. You could take my Chicago card, I forget, but um, it went through O'Hare Airport. And
Uh-huh.
there, there was a sign to get out of O'Hare, like take this exit to get out of this whole roundabout to get into O'Hare Airport and to
Mm-hmm.
go on your merry little way. Well, I was like 19 years old and I never had driven over there by myself. So I was
Oh,
literally going around and around O'Hare Airport trying to figure out where the fuck my exit was to get onto this other expressway to go out to the suburbs. I was running late for the fucking interview. I was so freaking pissed. I was like, what is happening here? And like, that's with that's with MapQuest, you know.
yes,
So I can't imagine having to drive. I never had to drive. No, let me see. I would have been what, maybe 98, 99, 2000. Yeah, yeah, I would have driven without MapQuest, but still, I used to just get lost. That was it. You would just get lost all the time.
yeah, yeah, you do. I'm very, as I heard a man say here a couple of months ago at a museum, I'm very cartographically challenged. Uh, Maps don't help me anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's a not to think about not even having one. Yeah, that's about what it sounds like. Let's just get lost. That's get lost territory. Just
yeah,
make sure you have a lot of gas. You'll be okay.
yeah, yeah. That was just my I'll get off my old person soapbox for a second here, but yeah. So then Dr. Potter's younger sister, Tony, has arrived to the house and Nell welcomes her. And I'm loving her very 80s outfit with
Yes.
with the what's it to the side? Is it a ponytail to the
The side
side?
ponytail.
The side
Uh-huh.
pony, yeah.
High side pony.
Yeah. And then Tony asks if they have any Rastafarians around, which
Yeah.
was very weird. I'm not quite sure what, but she says she's into music now. She's really into music and she wants to. Well, while she was in a mental institution, she started playing the drums and she met a dude who plays guitar. And I was like, whoa, let's just calm down. Let's get your stuff inside. But her vibe was really, she would be collecting rocks right now, crystals right now, I think
Uh-huh.
would be her
Yeah. Oh,
vibe.
absolutely.
She'd be a crystal lady.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, then they walk inside, they show her room. She asks how she's doing. She says she's feeling fine. And then Tony says that there's a band she wants to take them to that's playing locally to go see. So Potter's talking to Hawks, and he's like, "I know you were close to Dr. Merton, weren't you?" He's like, he asks him if he has had any contact with him since he left, but Frank says no, and he says, but you know where he is though." And Hawks says, yes, somewhere in Philadelphia. Then he stops him and he says, I find this line of questioning meaningless. What's your point? And Potter's like, oh, I just wanted to talk. But Frank says, don't take Ray too seriously. He's too high strung. And Frank
Mhm.
says, we all have our own thing. He's like, I'm here because I enjoy the social life.
Mhm.
I was like, okay. So starting off
Hey.
here, he said that this line of questioning is meaningless.
Yes.
Why do you think why he would think that it's meaningless?
You know, when he said that, my first reaction was, right, small talk is crazy sometimes. Then I thought, oh no, wait a minute. Maybe, maybe he was just like over the whole treatment thing. Like, don't try to handle me. Like
Uh,
just whatever. Just say what you're gonna say. Don't quit trying to therapy me or something.
okay, so the way I took
And it
it,
was weird. It was weird, but I related to it. You know, I was like, yeah, sometimes don't just say what you're gonna say because obviously this is not what you're really trying to say. Say what you're gonna say.
okay, that's interesting. I took it as it's meaningless because whatever you say, I don't believe you. I know that you
Oh,
killed the
sure.
doctor, and
Yeah,
I'm going
sure.
to kill you. So just
Yes,
fucking, you know.
I love that. Yes.
So at night during the drive to the rock concert, Nell lets Tony in about the patients that Dr. Potter is treating, and also lets Tony know why John Skagg is called the Bleeder. He's called the Bleeder,
Mm-hmm.
and we already found out he bleeds from his nose after he kills people. Very important to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Later at the nightclub, it's Potter, Nell, and Tony. They arrive and to watch this rock band named the Sick Fucks. This
Yes.
was a real band, and it was really their name,
What?
which I loved it. Yeah,
Really? Okay.
yeah.
Did not know that. That is cool.
So they were there to watch them perform. They're going in, and the doorman like looks at Dr. Potter and was like, $18, which in 1982, that's a lot of fucking money. $18
Yes, it was. It
for a
was.
hole in the wall, that's got to be like
Yes.
$80 now or some shit like that.
Yes.
So they he pays the money, they walk in, and we hear the song that they're playing. The lyrics to it are um chop
Mm-hmm.
chop 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 up your mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's a banger. I liked it. But Dr. Potter is not with the shits. He does not like it at all. He's even stuffing tissue in his ears.
That was so funny.
But Tony's like, fuck yeah. And she heads to the pit. She's down.
Yeah.
She starts like moshing. But this looks like I've seen some mosh pits go hard. This is kind of a
Yeah.
light mosh pit.
It was. It was mosh pit light. Yeah.
Yeah. Suddenly, the electricity goes out and the crowd all heads outside and sees that there's a blackout. In the hospital, preacher sits up in his bed claiming, "I made the lights go out." Sure,
Hmm.
sure. There's like
Sure.
we didn't see him like praying for the lights to go out or dreaming that they went
Right.
out or anything
Right.
like that. So I don't know where this is coming from.
It's his. That's his voyage. His
Yeah,
voyage tells him he has a special communication with the deity, and so But that was so weird. I was like, really? You
yeah.
you did? And it happened.
One of the things I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention earlier was that that Jack Shoulder, when they were writing this, the idea, the concept was, it came after a riot that he had lived through in New York City earlier.
Hmm.
So this came out in 1982. They would have started working on it in 80 or 81. So in 1978, there was oh shoot, I don't remember what year it was, but the year where the riots basically birthed hip hop.
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
But I don't know if it was now I'm questioning whether it was like 76 or 78. But I'm gonna say 78. Don't quote me on it. But the riots that started hip hop where people were able to break into these electronic stores and steal all these mixers and DJ tables and all that sort of stuff. And that literally was responsible for lit the flyer, lit the fire that became hip hop, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And it was
Yes.
really interesting to see something else come out of it, something random like this movie that we're watching like
Uh-huh.
42 years later. I just thought that was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
That is really cool. Yes, it is. I like those connections.
Yeah. So then later we see or Hawks, he's woken up too, and he puts his hands near the window, and neither the gate nor the alarm are active. So the four Voyagers walk out of the room, and I'm thinking, no backup generator? What's happening here? Like, there's no backup whatsoever.
Right.
It's kind of addressed a little bit later
Mm.
on in the movie, but I mean that's unfortunate. I mean, you should have a backup to the backup when you're the only protection from the outside world from like I was gonna say maniacs, from mentally dangerous people who've killed people or injured
Yeah.
people is like this electricity. You should have backup to the backup.
Yes. Oh, I would think you would think, but then I mean, then we wouldn't have the movie though.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I know.
okay. Okay, but
I
that
need to
was
see
really, really
them. I need to see
irresponsible.
them fuck with the generator or something like that. I
Right,
don't know.
right.
Yeah.
It was highly irresponsible.
Yeah. It just goes to show like uh Dr. Baines, he's like in some parts, yeah, like he's just irresponsible. That's all. So
Yes, yes.
Ray, poor Ray, is terrified as he sees that the patients are coming for him down the hall. This was one of the suspenseful moments where like they're walking down the hall to him. And this poor
Hmm.
guy, he only the only thing he could do only thing he could find to protect himself is a butter knife. And this was like
Yes.
you are so worried about these patients. You have an electronic door, but you don't have a weapon in your office. You didn't hide a weapon, and I know it's probably uh against the rules, but the way he was acting towards them, I would think
Yeah, I
he'd be like, "Fuck the rules. I'm gonna have a baseball bat
would
or
have
a
thought.
gun or something, you know." But he has a
I would have
freaking
thought.
butter knife.
Yeah, that was sad. That just made me sad.
Yeah. So he has to hide in the closet. Preacher and Ronald go in there and they don't find him immediately, but then they check in the closet. They find him. Ray's like, I'm your friend, please. And then, but unfortunately, I think Ronald is the one who takes the knife and he goes to stab him, but it misses and breaks on the wall or something like that. And Preacher calls him a blasphemer. And Ray is begging for his life. He's like, yeah, yeah, I am a blasphemer. Then Preacher goes ahead and starts punching and kicking him. And then, do you remember what happens here? Like what happens to Ray?
This is where the other guy there like picked him up and just body slammed him, right?
He body slams him, but he like picks him up and breaks his back,
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
which what I was not expecting.
me either. That was a lot. It was a whole lot.
And really the most brutal, well, not the most brutal death, but it's a pretty brutal death.
It was pretty brutal, and I kept I wondered. I don't know. It was really kind of messing with me that particular death, especially because Preacher was kind of saying, okay, you're a blasphemer, and he almost was using Ronald as the retribution, which didn't match for me. It was like just because he's a bigger guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I would have thought that Preacher would have been the one to actually rain the wrath down himself, but he used
yeah,
Ronald as kind of this proxy, and that was a little bit weird to me. And I was like, know. I don't know why that happened that way. And then I didn't see any other links later on either, though. So I don't know.
yeah. So Preacher then says a prayer and then they leave. The group walks outside where the hulking Elster. Well, first of all, I just want to go back and say the image of the four of them walking out of the institution was really cool. I really
It
like
was.
that.
It was.
And then the hulking Elster or Ronald punches through a car window to get at a doctor who was attempting to drive away. And apparently this knocks him out somehow. But yeah, so he's out of it. And then the four what were they called? Wanderers or
The Voyagers. The
Voyagers, thank you.
Voyagers.
The four Voyagers drive away in the doctor's car. Now, one thing I wanted to say here that was in the script, Hawks was supposed to then kill this doctor. But the actor, Jack Palance, said that he refused to do it, saying that it's
Mm-hmm.
not necessary for him to kill this doctor for you to know that he's a very dangerous man, which I can
Ah,
appreciate that.
I can too, because I wondered what had happened to the doctor. I was like, they weren't driving around with him, and he just kind of disappeared as quickly as he came up. But I love that point.
Yeah.
I think that Palance was right on with that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I appreciate that as well. So Then Dr. Nell and Tony arrive. Sorry, Dr. Potter, Nell, and Tony arrive home, and they find that the babysitter was asleep. I think her name was Bunky. Yeah, the Bunky was
Mhm.
asleep.
It's so funny.
Yeah, and Dr. Potter's trying to reach the hospital, but he can't. Then Bunky says that she hopes they don't fix the blackout too soon. It's kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And she's going to live to regret those words, or she's not going to live to
Right.
regret those words, however that goes. So, at a nearby shopping center, the four Voyagers arrive where a mob of looters have broken into several stores. Um, I know the story is built on some riots that he experienced
Mhm.
earlier in New York City, but this is kind of ridiculous. It's like how little the writer thinks of people. Like there was so many factors that led to the rioting in 1978. There's police
Yes,
brutality, there's disenfranchisement, there's poverty, there's
yes,
drugs.
yes.
All these things led to those riots, right? And like yeah, like poverty, people needing things, right? And then of course
Hmm.
people taking advantage of stuff. But there's reasons behind it. This was like
Sure.
5 seconds of no lights, and all of a sudden these
Yes,
middle class people are attacking and there's these white people who don't have this history of disenfranchisement and like
yes.
uh police brutality. So I was just like, it doesn't really match. But at the same time,
It didn't match. It was crazy. It didn't match at all.
yeah. But at the same time, I don't know if I necessarily wanted to see a bunch like it to be a bunch of black people like
Sure,
doing the rioting as well. It's just
sure.
like just how quickly the rioting happens. It seemed a bit ridiculous to me.
Right. It really did because first of all, that early in the blackout, you're gonna be trying to figure out what happened. First of all,
Yeah,
I don't think that's the first thing people think is, oh, I've been waiting for this. Let me go be a looter. I don't
yeah,
think that's what people, especially not in that place, in those kind of places. Like you said, this is looks like the burbs. Like,
yeah,
no, no.
exactly. They must have just really, really had it out for those stores or
Just
something.
right there.
Yeah. So then Dr. Potter arrives at the hospital the next day, and or no, it might be even the same night. Yeah, same night. Dr. Potter arrives at the hospital, and the police tell him that two men were killed and that the four have escaped with a car. Later, the four enter a sporting goods store packed with more looters, and the four escaped patients put on new clothes for themselves, and then they also arm themselves with a variety of weapons. Hawks takes a crossbow with several arrows, plus some handguns. Preacher takes a large Bowie knife and a I guess he did grab a double bladed axe, but
Mm.
I don't know if it was used. I don't recall it was. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
don't remember that it was used either.
yeah. Elster takes just the baseball bat, and then Skaggs takes a hockey mask. Now, looks very familiar to us as horror fans.
Right.
However, this came out in 1982, and obviously, the hockey mask would become a trademark of Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th series. However, you know, spoiler alert for people who haven't watched the first three Friday the 13th. Have you seen them, Amanda?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So give me a minute if you haven't seen them. But um, as you know, he doesn't put on the hockey mask until halfway through part three. And part three
Right.
was released in 1982, the same year as this movie, but it came out in
Um,
August and Alone in the Dark came out in November. So I think it was
mm,
just a coincidence, and obviously it's a
hmm.
little bit of a different face mask and all that, but like
Sure.
it was really interesting, the great minds thinking alike sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then so Skaggs grabbed the hockey mask and I think it's like a gardening fork, like to work in your garden. Um, Back at home, they're eating melted ice cream, and then Lilia like scares them out of the shadows. Tony takes her back to bed, and they're like using candles and flashlights. Tony tells her that as a kid, she was afraid to be alone in the dark. I love when they say the name of the movie.
Uh-huh,
The movie.
uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh, and she said she was sure there was something that she couldn't see that wanted to get her in the closet or outside the window or the thing under the bed. She knew that she couldn't hang her foot over the bed. And I'm
Hmm.
like, she's traumatizing this child. But Lila just says, wow, you must have been a pretty mixed up kid. Like, she's like, just takes it. She's like, yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Whatever, I'm good.
That sounds like a you problem. But honestly, what did you think of this? Like, her just telling her, it didn't seem like she was messing with her. Like, I would mess with my nieces or my nephew, or she seemed like
Yeah.
she was like trauma dumping on this little girl.
She really was, but she also was trying to keep herself straight, you know?
Oh,
It's like she
yeah,
knows that
yeah.
she just had just come from the place that she was like, okay, I don't want to go back to the place, but I mean, I got to think about this stuff, and this is a thing for me. And I don't know, I don't personally sleep with my feet hanging over the bed either. I mean, I have slightly different reasons, but they kind of go along with that, you know. But
Yeah.
I grew up in the inner city. There was other stuff that could get on you if you keep put your foot out the bed. You know, so
Uh,
that was the whole thing. I feel that. I
understood.
feel that.
Yes. I don't sleep. I don't do it either, but I
Hmm.
don't do it because I cannot stand having one body part different temperature than another body part. So like if my foot
Oh,
is cold and the rest of me is warm, I can't stand that at all. So like I need to be fully covered. Yeah. Obviously my head is fine. That's different, right? But like
right, right.
anything else, that's weird. So outside, Skag the Bleeder swipes a man with the gardening fork, killing him. And the kill looked pretty cool. Practical effects for the win. And then apparently the other Voyagers see this and they're kind of like really scared of him and they kind of like back away and they drive off, leaving the bleeder behind. Then a woman who was participating in the looting, she's like holding suitcases and stuff like that. She screams her head off when she sees the bloody body on the ground. And I thought the concept of this woman looting and then seeing this bloody body on the ground and then screaming. It's like, well, what did you expect to see at a riot? It's not the
I
safest place
mean,
to be at.
you would think, right?
Yeah,
But I mean, but that goes back into like the looting scene was just not. It just didn't. It was one of these things that's not like the other. So the fact
yeah,
that she would be surprised, that's also not like the other.
yeah. I think they very well could have made it that they just break into the sporting goods store. Like,
Sure.
I don't think, yeah, I understand that your whole concept started with the riot, but I don't think it's necessary. By the time you were making the movie, I think you could have just like, because it doesn't really add anything other than they needed new
Right.
clothes and weapons. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm being cynical here. I wonder if it's like, you know, trying to play into the fears that white people have of like riots, like inner city riots and like people of color doing that. And so when white people see riots, it's automatically a scary factor for them or something.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder
You
maybe
know,
if
but
that's it.
I think you might be onto something, because it's very telling that the escape patients kind of went and mixed in with the rioters, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's like you can't tell people apart if you're all doing the same thing. So it could be playing into those fears, like, hey, did something could be happening right here in our own backyard, and we don't even
Yeah,
know
yeah,
because we're not afraid of them. They look like us. So we let them make it. We figured they're doing looting light just like us.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you could be on something. You could be onto something
We're
there.
gonna make this movie deep. You and I, we're gonna make this work. Yeah. So the next day, Lila goes off to school. In a nearby neighborhood, Hawks, Preacher, and Ronald are driving around, and they come across a bicycle messenger, and Hawks is like, "I want that." And I didn't really wasn't quite sure what he meant, but they're tormenting this bicycle messenger. And when the man mouths off to them, calling Hawks an asshole, the enraged the enraged hawk throws the van in reverse and plows into the bicycle messenger, and then killing him. And then Preacher takes
Hmm.
his hat. Uh, Hawks does not like being called an asshole.
Yeah, he does not like it.
And we see that later on in the movie as well.
Hmm.
Well, that this will come back. So at Dr. Potter's house, Tony tells Nell, or yeah, basically asks or tells Nell to accompany her to an anti-nuclear protest that is going on in town. So there's this whole backstory of the power going out because there was some issue with the nuclear power plant in town where they were getting all their
Hmm.
energy from.
Hmm.
They were worried that perhaps it was going to be another Chernobyl or something like that. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't recall. I know that, in the 80s, there was the Red Scare and there was the Cold War, and we were worried about nuclear bombs and nuclear
Hmm.
war from
Hmm.
Russia or the USSR. I don't know if that extended to nuclear power plants as well. I don't recall that. Is that something that you experienced where like society at large was like scared of nuclear power plants?
I don't know. I mean, because I'm native Texan, and so there have been lots and lots of movements to just preserve our dependence on oil.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't know that I ever thought much or heard much about any of these other resources like that.
Okay. Yeah. Same. Like I remember having to do drills where we would hide under the desk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's going to save me from a nuclear explosion. How?
Sure, right. How? I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know.
So then Preacher arrives wearing the bicycle messenger's hat and uniform, and Nell answers the door. Preacher claims that he has a telegram for the doctor. She says he's not in, and she offers to take it, but Preacher's like, "This is for him. I have to give it to him." She's like, "Well, I'm his wife, so you can give it to me." He's like, "Well, when is he expected back?" And she says, "Sometime later." And he's like, she's like, "Sometime later you can come back." And he says, "You can rest assured that I will." I was like, "Oh, okay. I like that line."
Yeah, okay.
And she's kind of spooked by his strange behavior, but nothing really comes of it. She doesn't really mention it to anybody.
Hmm.
So later at the hospital, Potter, Bain, and Marissa discuss the four missing third floor patients, as well as all the others that are still missing. And and Bain says that their violence is a cry for pain and no one hears them. And then Potter's like, "Listen, I get it. I understand what you're going for, but the three men who were murdered certainly heard their pain, right?
Yes,
So Bane, the way Bane looks, it looks like he was just hit in the face. He's got literally got his hand up to his face, like, "Oh my God, what did you just say?" Like he can't believe
yes,
that Potter would say something against his patients.
yes, exactly. Well, and basically against him and his treatment methods. He's
Right,
really
yeah, yeah,
basically telling like that's more that, doctor wordplay. He is like, hey, you tripping and you kind of messed up on this one.
yeah,
So yeah, he was literally physically affronted by that was big words. That was big words.
yeah. And then I believe it was Bane who said, "All right, they're crazy, isn't everybody?" And I thought, yeah, but not everybody is homicidal.
Right,
You know?
right. There are levels. There's levels.
Yeah. So a little later, after Tony and Nell leave, Lila comes home to a vacant house. She's taken off her jacket, and suddenly Elster is there, claiming to be her babysitter. This scene
Mm.
was very, very uncomfortable. I did not like
It
it
was.
at
I did
all.
not like it at all. Oh my gosh, it had me so nervous. I was literally clutching all my pearls and can't be no, no. Of
I'm,
all the things, no.
yeah, I am so happy that they restrained themselves.
Me too. Oh my gosh, yes. I was afraid they were setting her up as one of those, like, well, she's too bratty, she's too, precocious. So it's okay if we, sacrifice her. But I was so happy that they didn't do that. I
Yeah,
was so
same.
happy.
So, Elsa's there claiming to be her babysitter. She's like, "Where's my mom?" Um, yeah, she's unsettled by him and like how he's acting and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
he's acting like, quote unquote friendly to her, saying like,
Mm-hmm.
"Where's your room?" She's like, "Come on, cutie." Grabs her by the hand. She's like, she snatches her hand away from him. Is like, "Don't call me cutie." She's like, he's like, we can have fun a lot. We can have a lot of fun upstairs in your room." And he's like, "Do you have scissors? Do you have some paper? We can make some cutouts. I promise I won't try to hold your hand again." And
Mm.
I'm like, this is so fucked up.
It
Um,
was terrible. Oh my gosh, it was. But I mean, the suspense that it built, it did what it was supposed to do. I mean,
yeah,
it's a horror movie, and they made me nervous on that one. Well
yeah.
done.
And she's like, "Well, why you and not Bunky and my typical my typical babysitter?" And he's like, "Well, Bunky wasn't home." And so the scene just ends here. I was like, "Oh my God, we're gonna come back." And
Oh,
meanwhile, Tony and Nell are in jail, having been arrested with dozens of other protesters. Um, Tony meets a certain Tom Smith, one of those arrested with them during the demonstration. Tom Smith, what a generic sounding name.
so generic. And
Yeah,
but he also has a very generic look. I mean, it matched him.
that is true. That is true.
Looks like an every guy.
When it's time to make their phone calls, Tom lets Tony use his turn at the phone, where she calls Dr. Potter, her husband, at the hospital to let him know that they were arrested and that they need to be bailed out and that somebody needs to be watching Lila. So then Potter calls Bunky. So we don't see the whole thing about her calling Dr. Potter, but we do see
Mhm.
Potter following up and calling Bunky and asks her to go over to his house and make sure that Lila's okay. So immediately Bunky goes over and arrives at Potter's house and she's looking around. She's calling for Lila. And the whole time I'm thinking, please, God, please, please, please,
Oh,
please, please.
yes, yes. Oh,
But luckily, we find that she has just been taking a nap. And so she's okay
hmm,
from what we can see. She's okay.
yes.
Um, Bunky calls Dr. Potter and tells her that Lila is fine, and she asks if he wants her to stay, and he says please until we come home. It's going to be a couple of hours. So Bunky does what every teenager in a horror movie we can think of,
Of
and
course.
calls her boyfriend. And her boyfriend Billy immediately comes over and invites him over. He shows up, and as he does, he enters the house and he sees items of clothing leading up to the master bedroom. This is so like, do you have the balls of you like to do this? Like they could come home at any moment.
Yes, yes. It's somebody else's house. No, no. It's like, really?
Yeah.
And how long you think that kid gonna stay asleep? Like, for real? Have you met a kid?
Yeah,
Honestly.
I mean, teenagers are stupid. I was dumb as a teenager. You're stupid, 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 stupid. So Billy follows the trail to the master bedroom. He gets in there. He locks the door, which is the only good thing he did, is locks the door. Well, I guess kind of messes with her later on, but that's what I would do is
Right,
lock the
right.
door. Um, And then they immediately, he jumps on the bed. They immediately start making out, getting naked, such and such. Um, while making out in the bed, Bunky hears a noise coming from the closet and tells Billy to go check it out. He's reluctant to because he's busy, but he goes to check it out and nothing. He opens the closet door, nothing. Then, while walking back to the bedroom, something happens. Do you remember what happens here?
Yes, he gets snatched under the bed, just like Tony was worried about.
And this is why you don't hang your feet over the bed.
This is why I don't hang my feet off the bed like
Yeah.
that.
I thought this was really cool. This was surprising. I wasn't expecting
It
this.
was. It was. It was so surprised because that means that whoever was there had it was there the whole time.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
that made it
shit.
even
The whole time
creepier.
she was there.
Yes, that made it even creepier. It's like,
Yeah.
what?
Fuck, I forgot about that. Because even when Billy gets in the room, she's like, "What took you so long? We only have an hour now."
Yes, yes,
That means it's been because he said it could be a couple hours, so it's been at least an hour for Billy to get there. So she's probably been in the
exactly.
room that long, and he's just there. Oh man,
Yes, just there, just hanging out, waiting. Oh my gosh, watching her leave the clothes down.
yeah, yeah, I like that. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. So so Billy disappears underneath and we don't hear anything, but then the Bowie knife starts being jabbed through the bed several times, once almost between her crotch, at Bunky, who was able to dodge it. Then she's kind of like crying, she's not sure what to do, but eventually she jumps off the bed and runs to the bedroom door. Just so she's trying to get the door unlocked. Just when Preacher comes out from under the bed, she manages to open the door, only to be grabbed by Elster, who strangles her to death by lifting her up off of her feet and choking her. Pretty effective scene, pretty effective death there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in filming this scene, this was done without any effect. Elster actually grabs her by the neck and lifted her up for the shot. So that
Oh,
actually happened.
oh wow. Yeah, that must have been terrifying though.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine that. Later, Dr. Potter arrives home with Nell, Tony, and Tom, the guy they met, just this random dude that they met at the uh, protest, or I guess that in the
Yeah,
jail, right?
yeah, at the jail.
And they see that cops are all over the house. Lila is fine. She told them that Ronald was there, and but nothing happened. So, we're gonna take her word for it, thankfully. And then the police apparently do not know about the murdered Bunky and Billy. And they don't know where, even Potter says they don't know where Bunky or her boyfriend are because he did arrive. People saw him arrive. Um, Tom is invited to stay for dinner. And then Potter also invites Detective Barnett to stay as well, in case any more of the escaped patients pay a visit. That evening, Dr. Bain is trying to get a hold of Potter on the phone, but he's getting no response. He's concerned that Potter may be ignoring his calls. At nightfall, the Potter family is having dinner with their guests, and then Tom talks about his background in alternative energy, making windmills. Potter says that it's better than tilting at them. And then Lila kind of laughs at this, kind of scoffs at this, like, "Oh, it's a dad joke." So it's like I didn't get it, but apparently it's a reference to something. Did you catch that at all?
But it's the only thing I could think about is that if a windmill is going and you tilt, you get caught in it. But
Mm.
then I couldn't figure out what that was related to all they were talking about.
Yeah, same thing. I was like, what does
Um,
that even mean? So I looked it up.
yeah, I don't know what that means.
It's tilting at windmills is an English idiom which means attacking imaginary enemies, originating from Miguel de
Mhm.
Cervantes's novel Don Quixote. So it's a very literary
Oh,
reference. which I don't
Okay.
which I don't understand why Lila, who is all of what? How old would you say she is 9 years old or
She seemed to be 9 or 10, maybe.
yeah. Has she already read Don Quixote? And would she know that reference? I mean, she's a
I
reader.
don't know.
She's
She
obviously,
is maybe she did. She is
yeah,
precocious. Maybe she did know.
yeah. But I had to look it up.
I
But
didn't
it,
know. Yeah, I didn't know.
yeah, I've never read Don Quixote, but um, I think that's interesting that it's about attacking imaginary enemies.
Yeah, yeah. That's good.
Yeah,
That's really good.
I like that little reference there.
Yes, yes, that's really good. I like it.
So then Detective Barnett, so they hear some noise outside, and Detective Barnett goes to check the windows, and then he eventually goes outside to check on that noise. I was really pissed because why is he the only one to go outside? Why is
You
he laying
know,
his life down on the line for these people?
yeah, that's that whole sacrificial Negro thing that you know, I understand that they tried to make it seem logical. Okay, he's the police officer. He's the lead police officer. He's the one that knows what to do in the face of danger. But I'm like, but really, that still just didn't seem too good. Like, this is your family, though. Why y'all not coming out here? Why would he just offer himself to just him one? It wasn't like he had backup. It was just him. That
Yeah,
didn't seem very smart. Like, even if they thought there was still more than one of them that were out that had escaped. So
yeah,
it wasn't very smart. Uh, and of course, I was peeved and I was like, yeah, of course, this is what happens. Of
yeah.
course.
And to avoid any concern, and I know this is 1982, but still, fuck them. Like to avoid any concern about like sacrificial Negro, like you said, they could have had a black person in another role that doesn't die. Like he could have been Tom. There could have
Sure,
been, yeah, if you want this guy
sure.
Detective Barnett to die, sure, but at least have another black character who doesn't die.
Exactly.
Then it's like, oh well, uh, Doctor Detective Barnett just happened to die, but it wasn't because he was black. He's not being a
Sure.
sacrificial Negro because there's other black characters who live, sort of thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so I appreciate they had some black people in these roles, but it sucks that they both end up dying, which we haven't gotten there yet, but spoiler alert, he ends up dying. So um he go as the family and Tom are watching from the window, suddenly a crossbow is fired and Barnett is hit and pinned to a tree. He screams and blood is coming pouring out of his mouth. And Potter runs to like go help him outside to try to
Mhm.
save him, but Tom stops him and says that we should protect ourselves. This is infuriating and so fucked up because he was still
Yes.
alive at the time, and I hate that. I hate that
Yes.
so much for him. He deserves
Yes.
so much better.
Yes, I hated the shot, that last shot of him before he closed the door. He's literally looking at him, begging him, okay, please come help me. And then they just close the door. And I'm like, that was real bad. That was gut wrenching, actually. You just
Yeah.
left him.
It's like the movie. Have you seen the movie Annabelle?
Yes,
And oh man, what is her name? Who's in Annabelle? Uh,
yes. That is, I know, is it Viola Davis?
Viola
No,
Davis, yeah, I
not
believe.
her.
Is it?
Alfred Woodard. It was
Okay.
Alfred Woodard. Yep. It was Alfred Woodard.
Yeah, and she is the basically sacrificial Negro in that movie too.
Yes, she
And
is.
I
She
fucking hate
is.
that movie because of it. I mean, it's a bad movie
Yes,
overall, but fuck that
yes.
movie.
I hated that. Oh my gosh. Yes, it is. It's a real point for me, you know, as you
Yeah,
can imagine. It's just, there are so many things that don't have to happen. Like, there doesn't have to be this sacrifice. If it does have to be a sacrifice, can you make it somebody else for a different reason? I get that people have to die, because I mean that's what happens in these
yeah,
movies, but can you create these characters in a different way that they are not very obviously sacrificial in that way, as if their humanity is less than the other characters? Like, that's what it always looks like.
yeah.
It's like,
Especially
really?
when, sorry to interrupt you, but especially when he's still alive and you don't go out to save him
Well,
and you just
sure.
close the door in his face. That's,
It will exactly. And then it shows these in-group dynamics that happen though, right? Because you're listening to Tom. Tom is a literal stranger. You have known that police officer longer than you've known Tom.
Yeah, or
They're
at least
both
the same.
guys,
Yeah,
but you're gonna bond with Tom and listen to what Stranger Tom says because he's another white guy like you. I was really bothered by that. I was like, see, that's why something needs to happen to you, Dr. Potter. At that point, I thought you shouldn't have been so easily swayed. They should have had to drag you from that door. You
yeah,
shouldn't have been so easily persuaded, but you were because you're with your in group and you're okay with sacrificing Barnett.
yeah. That's fucked up, man. I
Yeah, that
hate
was
that part.
so whack. Oh, that was so whack. It was.
It will be reflected in the score of the movie for me.
Uh-huh.
So the group reacts quickly and begins making sure that all the doors and windows of the house are locked, but they also learn that the phone is dead. Tony is too scared to go upstairs alone, so Tom goes upstairs instead and secures all the windows. When Dr. Potter looks back outside, he sees that Dr. Barnett's body is gone. That's the other thing. They can't even let the man rest in peace.
Can't even
Jesus.
rest in peace. Then you just, I was hoping with a tiny minute, I was like, maybe he escaped. Maybe he was able to get out and maybe he went to get help for himself. Maybe that happened. I
Yeah.
knew that was stupid of me, but I thought it for a hot second.
Yeah. So then Tony says that she needs a Valium, and they're like, "Oh, you don't need a Valium, you're fine." And then Lila's like, "Oh, even I wish I had a Valium or something." Like, little girl, please. But see, like this, it was funny, but I don't know. We just saw you're trying to break the tension of, Detective Barnett dying, but
Yes.
I don't want that tension to be broke. I am really still upset about it.
Yes, yes, we should be paying attention to this. Yes.
So
And
it's yeah,
medication is not going to help that. You can't drug
yeah,
me and make me forget about that.
yeah. So it's a bit, it's definitely off-putting for me.
Hmm.
That happens. That the joke at that point. So
Hmm.
Detective Burnett. I might have said to call him Barnett, but it's Detective Burnett. Just wanted to fix that.
Hmm.
So all of a sudden, an arrow is shot through a window, and Tom and Dr. Potter barricade the front door with furniture, as well as some of the windows, as well. Sorry, Tom and Dr. Potter barricade the front door with furniture, as well as they also barricade the windows. Then some more arrows are shot through the window. This feels a lot like the movie You're Next,
Yes, it
with the
does
arrows
feel like
coming
that.
through. Yeah, which I
Uh-huh,
like.
uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
love that movie so much.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Um, then Nell finally goes upstairs to get her Valium. She's like, I need this. I cannot survive without it. Meanwhile, Dr. Bain is told by the telephone operator that the phone line to the Potter residence is out of order. And he says, "What do you mean by out of order? What the fuck do you think that means? Out of order? What kind of question is that?"
That was really weird. It really was weird for him to ask her that because that's what she said. She literally said, and then she just repeated that.
And he's like, there's no need to be rude or nasty or something. And she's like, I'm not. I'm literally telling you it is out
Yes,
of order.
yes, yes.
I want he's probably like high off the ganja. He's like fucking out
He
of
is.
his mind.
Something is going on with Dr. Payne right there
Yeah.
because that didn't make a lot of sense.
So Marissa says that Marissa asks if she should call the cops, and he says never. Love it. I love that though.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. No,
Uh,
he's a hippie.
so at the house, the group is kind of talking over their situation. Like the phone is cut, so maybe they're going to try to reach out for the detective. Hopefully, someone will come looking
Hmm.
for him. Um, they then hear a car approaching and they're really excited. They're like, oh, hopefully it's the cops. But it's actually Dr. Bain, who gets
Uh-huh.
out and tells them that their phones are out of order. and they're all like yelling at him, "Hey, be careful, careful!" Like the
Right,
the people
right.
are outside. He's just like oblivious of again, like high or
I think he
something.
was. I think he was, really.
Yeah, and they're telling him to get back in his car and drive away and to get the police or whatever. But Dr. Potter then yells at Bane that the Voyagers are here. Bane decides that it would be best to try to talk with them and then calls them out. He like gets on the porch and is like basically like come to me, my children, sort of thing,
Yes, yes, yes.
It's like completely delusional at this point.
It was really, really, it was perfect. But it was really crazy because that's how dedicated he was to his method. And it really, really drew me back to that Nell had said though in the very beginning, that you have to be a crazy to work with the crazies or whatever it was that she
Yeah.
said. That paraphrasing that, it really drew me back to that. It was like he's really gone. Like he's really closer in this. That's why he can be so compassionate. He's one of these are our people. He's these are our people.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
we are each other. Like, just come talk. Let's come
Yes.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
So suddenly, or not suddenly, after a while, Preacher kind of comes out from the shadows behind the car from where he's been hiding near some bushes. And then Bane tries to talk with him to get him to come back to the hospital. The way that Preacher is walking, or so Martin Landau as Preacher is walking, is really, I mean, it's just suspenseful and kind of creepy and scary. He's just like
Mm-hmm.
walking very
Mm-hmm.
slowly, like his eyes are affixed to Dr. Bane. Like you know right away that Dr. Bane is in danger, and Dr. Bane does not
Mm-hmm.
realize that he's in danger, right?
Right. Right.
So Preacher suddenly responds by raising the knife up above his head and slashing off Dr. Bane's left ear with his bowie knife. And then he sees that so Potter tries to or opens the door and tries to get Dr. Bane to run into the house. Preacher sees this and tries to run into the house, but they end up closing the door. But Bane is just standing there like in shock, like just with his
Mm-hmm.
hand to his
Mm-hmm.
ear. And I'm like, just run, do something. But he's so
Do
much in shock that
something.
he can't. So finally, he gets his ass in a gear and he runs back to his car. And Preacher follows him, and um, he's trying to close the window, but Preacher's there and he can't do it. And he tells Preacher, "Remember, thou shalt not kill." And then Preacher says, basically from Romans 12:19, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." Preacher pulls out his axe and swings it. I guess he did use axe. I don't know. And
Yeah.
then just forget everything he said about that poster. Pulls out his axe and swings it. And that's the end of Dr. Bane. But my question to you is, what vengeance? Who are you avenging? I thought Dr. Bane was great to you. Oh, I guess the vengeance of them having killed their old doctor, maybe?
Maybe, or maybe well, maybe he saw Bane as because he did hold that over his head that he knew he was afraid of being cut in half
Oh,
if he
yeah, yeah, yeah.
misbehaves. His thing was like, you're not going to threaten me like that ever again. You're in my
Yeah,
nightmare, so you got to go. You got to go. This is my vengeance on you.
that's a great point. That's a great
Yeah,
point.
well, particularly that it was Preacher that killed him, right? If it had been somebody else, but for a Preacher to be the one, yeah, he was literally holding that over his head. I didn't see what he was holding over everybody else's head, right? But that's how he handles him. And he was like, yeah, you got to go.
That's a good point.
I need sweet dreams now.
So then Potter tries to scream to the men outside and tells them. So they're Nell is like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? So finally he's like, I don't know. Then he thinks, oh, maybe it's because of Dr. Merton. So he screams outside and tells them that he did not murder Dr. Merton, that he's at a hospital in Philadelphia that they can call to verify, but he gets no reply. Suddenly, Detective Burnett's dead body is thrown by Elster into the house through the window. And I said, RIP, detective, you deserve so much better than this.
Yes, he did.
Even after death, he has no rest.
The indignity.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So Tony has at this point kind of lost it. She thinks she sees another window open, and when she goes to close it, a bloody body jumps through the window at her, but she only imagined it. When Potter asks her what is wrong, Tony says, "I'm getting sick again." And then they look around, they saw that the windows were closed. So this jump scare here, did they get you? Because they got me a little
Yeah,
bit
they
with
did.
it.
They got me. They got me. And I was like, well, who is that? Like the first thing was, oh, the next thing was Bush.
Yeah.
Who's that even? Where did they come from?
So it was that delusion, but we do I did find out that this was done by makeup effects wizard and horror god Tom Savini. He was brought in
Okay.
specifically to create the horrific monster apparition, and Savini achieved the startling effect by covering an actor in a mixture of soap and Rice Krispies cereal. That was how they did it.
Shut up.
That's all it was.
That's, oh my gosh. Hey, it worked. I mean, yeah, it looks very maggoty and deteriorated and stuff.
Yeah. So later, they're hearing noises from the basement, and then Lila smells smoke, and Potter realizes that Preacher must have broken into the basement and is planning to set fire to the house. When Nell goes to look for the fire extinguisher, she finds the dead Bunky and Billy in a closet. So the cops didn't look through the closets, they didn't secure the house to make sure nobody else was there.
I don't understand that part. No, no, I don't understand it. Why was they not leaking from under the door anyway?
Yeah,
Like you would say, I don't know. That was weird.
yeah. It's slasher logic.
Yes, yes, sure.
So Potter takes the extinguisher and he runs down to the basement and he actually struggles with Preacher, knocks him out, and then pulls out the fire extinguisher and puts out the fire. Upstairs, Ronald bursts into the house, or I should say, upstairs, Elster bursts into the house from the kitchen back door and runs for the group with his baseball bat. Lila ducks under the table and cuts his leg with a knife, and he ends up falling down to the floor. Tom, interestingly enough, Tom swings a large cleaver into Elster's back.
Mm-hmm.
Tom then picks up Elster's baseball bat and beats the cleaver in further into his back, and Elster
Yeah.
falls over dead. I thought that
Oh,
was pretty cool. I had never
it
seen something like
it
that
really
before.
was. It was like, oh my gosh, just like centimeter by centimeter, really.
Yeah, it was rough. I was like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was
It
that was
was like
crazy.
it was cool. It was cool.
But it was interesting who did it. Um,
Yeah.
so we'll get to that. So then Dr. Potter decides to make a run for it. He's going to make a run to the car, drive it closer to the house so everybody can get in. He runs outside and drives up and runs to the car, but it's like it's still really close to the house. I didn't think
Hmm.
this was necessary at all. I think they all could have run for it at the same time.
They really could have. They could have, but then we wouldn't have gotten the
Yeah, yeah,
scene.
yeah.
So, I guess
It's
okay,
just it's
more
just
slasher
silly. All
logic.
they had to do was park the car further away. Is all I'm saying.
Right, right,
Yeah.
sure, sure, yes.
So of course his car doesn't start. Then he does try Dr. Bain's car, which does work. Uh, Inside, Tom is embracing a shaken Tony, and then suddenly blood begins to pour from, like, it's pouring down her face and onto her lips and all that.
Yeah.
And what did you think when you saw the blood? Did you have any
Well,
inkling at this point?
started counting the people, and I was like, "Where? Well, how could this body be hiding in the ceiling? Like, who could be dripping? We got this. Okay, we're accounted for. What is this? What is happening?" They
Yeah.
got me. They
Yep.
got me. They
They got
got
me
me.
too because the blood has actually been dripping from Tom's nose. Nell sees this and immediately realizes who Tom really is. It's
Uh-huh.
it's Skag, also known
Oh,
as the Bleeder, and he
yes.
immediately wraps his hands around Tony's neck and begins to strangle her. Potter
Uh-huh.
then runs back inside the house. When he hears the screaming, he grabs Tom away from his sister, and Lila hands her mother the knife. And now he's like, Potter's like, do it, do it. And finally, she's like, no, but finally she uses it to stab Tom in the stomach, killing him. Okay, so that's the big twist. That Tom was
Yes.
actually Skaggs because we never saw him. We never saw his face. He was
We
always
never
hiding,
did.
which is
Uh-huh.
a gimmick. It's a
Right.
gimmick, but like, okay, you got me.
It worked. Yeah, it worked.
Yes.
They got me.
But here's my thing. They were arrested and they were released. Like, I know it's 1981 or whatever, or 82 when this was made. There were still, were there not fingerprints, or I guess it wasn't computers. So, like, could you just go by, was it before computers? Could you just go by a different name? Like, what to stop you from just going by different names?
You know, again, this since this was riot light, I feel like
Yeah,
this was arrest light
yeah,
because they
yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of threw them all in there, and then that's kind of like everybody was like just letting them go. And so they let him out when they let the two of them out too. So I don't think they were really holding them in real arrest, I
yeah.
guess.
Okay,
That's yeah,
we're
because
gonna
it
let
doesn't
that
make
be it.
sense. It doesn't make sense. No, it didn't make any sense because I'm thinking, yeah, no, on top of how he even got there. He just happened to randomly be here at this protest. I mean, really? Just
Yeah,
that's just what he wanders into and okay, but he's
he,
nice looking, so I guess that works and
he's
he gets invited to
passionate.
dinner.
He's
Yeah,
passionate
he's
about nuclear energy or something.
yes, and he's so intelligent. I mean, I guess that works for inviting people to dinner, I
Yeah.
guess.
And then suddenly, Preacher comes out of the basement, and Dr. Potter struggles with him, and he manages to twist the large bowie knife out of Preacher's hands and stabs him in the chest with it and throws the fatally wounded Preacher back down into the basement. As Dr. Potter, Nell, and Lila and Tony gather together for comfort, Hawks appears standing in the kitchen
Mhm.
doorway with his crossbow aimed right at them. I had forgotten about Hawks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, it's not just us crazy ones who kill when they have to, right? It says Hawk. And then suddenly, and so like he's pointing this crossbow at the family. And Dr. Potter's like, please just don't kill my family. Don't kill them, please. And there's a lot of suspense here.
Yeah.
It's done really well. Then all of a sudden, we see the light flickering, and the electricity comes back on. And randomly, the TV happens to be set to a newscast where they're talking about the escaped inmates, and we see Dr. Merton being interviewed on the television.
Mhm.
So then immediately, Dr. Potter's like, see, Dr. Merton's still alive. And Hawks looks at it and like he gets really pissed and he breaks the TV. And then he's about to strike Dr. Potter, but he stops himself and he thinks, and then he runs off into the night. So there's another scene after this, but like this Deus Ex Machina thing that we got going on here. What did you think of it?
So when I saw that, first of all, it was funny how random it was, but I was like, but of course this happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It kind of ran me back to that saying, uh, is that even villains have an honor code? And since his honor code, his code was, I'm gonna kill this Dr. Potter because he killed Dr. Melton, right? Now that I know that that's not true, my purpose is not that I don't have a goal anymore. Like I don't have to do this anymore. So I can't kill him now because the premise I was basing this on is not true. So even though he was angry about it, it seemed like he felt honor bound. Hawks is really this guy of honor. Like throughout the whole thing, he behaves honorably, like how he didn't want to kill the other doctor.
Yeah.
They didn't have to show that, and how Jack Palance didn't. He really was in tune with that character, I think, and was showing that even though he um, was deep in mental illness, he still had some kind of honor code. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. That was really cool because I thought, huh, okay, this matches. It matches that he didn't go on to do that, right?
Yeah. It really goes with the character, the background
It
that they've
did.
get in Hawks. Yeah.
Yeah, it really
Uh,
did.
I just thought it's just kind of laughable how convenient,
So
convenient it was. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, that was really funny. It was really funny.
Yeah. So then Hawks walks through the town and he ends up passing the nightclub where the sick fucks are playing again and where we saw them earlier in the movie. He enters the club and he beats the doorman outside when he calls him an asshole, right? We already know he doesn't like that. He takes his money. In the club, Hawks watches the punk rock band perform when suddenly a girl who's like fucked up on drugs walks up to Hawks and says something to him, exchanges some words. He pulls out his 45 caliber and points it at her neck. And she says, "You wouldn't dare." And then he like points it even closer to her.
Uh-huh.
And she laughs and she says, "You do dare." And she just looks at him and is laughing even more. And then Hawk starts to laugh. And then that's the end of the movie. What the
That's the end
fuck?
of the movie.
Okay. So we're gonna get into what you thought about the whole movie in a second. We'll rate it. But
Uh-huh.
just particularly the end of the movie, what did you think?
The first thing I thought about was when Norman Bates says, "We all go a little crazy sometimes," right? Like that, it
Okay.
really, really, I saw him in my head saying that. I mean, here is one sick fuck in a group of sick fucks watching sick fucks on the stage. I mean, these are our people. We all are just a step away from this insanity, so to speak, right? I loved
Oh,
that.
okay.
Oh, I loved that because he said he was a social guy. He likes
God
to
damn, Rhonda.
associate
Yeah. Okay,
that,
okay.
right? I was
You
like,
schooled me
of
now.
course. And I was like, of course you would love this. You just want to be around your own people, bro. I
You
love the
schooled
way
me
they did
because I was like, what the fuck does this mean? But you, okay, it makes sense now. Yeah. I like the ending even better now. So, but
Yeah,
one thing I
yeah.
wanted to say that you caught on, perfectly caught on, was after the movie was filmed years later, one of the members of the Sick Fucks ran into Jack Palance in the streets
Mm-hmm.
of New York. And he said to Palance that he was one of the sick fucks in the film. And Palance replied, "We were all sick fucks in that movie." So you had it. You had it perfectly.
I love this. Well, it did that's what it did.
Yeah.
It did that for me, especially with Bane also being one of them, right? I was like, yeah, you're just one step away. Like everybody's just one step away.
Yeah.
I think the
So,
Joker said to Batman once, "We're all just one bad day away from
yeah.
something like that." Yeah, those
Yeah.
those things come to mind.
So that's the end of the movie. So we'll rate it in a second. But overall, what did you think of Alone in the Dark from 1982?
I was very highly entertained. I watched it with the captions on that made it even better because then I could understand what the band was singing.
Oh,
And it's
always.
just
Oh,
like you
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
these captions, and I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. It's insane. I cannot believe that I missed it, but I'm glad that I got a chance to see it at a point where I could understand what it was trying to do. I think if I absolutely know if I'd have seen this when I was a kid or a whole lot younger, I probably wouldn't have been able to. I probably would have just tied it to some power to the people kind of thing. But like even beyond that, I don't think I would have gotten all that connection. So I'm really glad that I was introduced to it now, that I can see what they might have been trying to do there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I can't believe that I haven't seen this either. I mean, just the cast, Jack Palance, Donald Pleasance, Martin Landau. These I think Martin Landau won an Oscar for, or at
Mm-hmm.
least he was nominated, but I think he won an Oscar for
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ed Wood, and then Jack Palance won his Oscar. So you got two Academy Award winners in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just uh, it was kind of a refreshing take on the trope of mentally uh, mental patients escaping and going on a rampage because it's four
Mm-hmm.
of them.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And yeah, so I liked it. The only thing that I didn't like again was the other use of other tropes that we saw with
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
detective and with Ray. So that really hurt it for me. But overall, I was entertained as well. I had fun watching it. So, well,
Mm-hmm.
let's go ahead and rate the movie out of five upside down crosses. What would you give Alone in the Dark?
So I would give it a 4. I have
Okay.
to take away that last one for that, the way they did Detective Barnett, and the way that they pushed Ronald into that stereotype too. That was I didn't like that either. Like
Mhm.
just because he's a bigger guy, like what are you saying? Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I'll take away the one cross for that. But I do think that it was, as you said earlier, pretty progressive. I think it was
Mhm.
kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even with the weed, they're just smoking weed out in the open,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
so
Exactly.
I'm gonna give it three upside down crosses. I really don't like that, the trope, the magical Negro trope. And if
Hmm.
if I don't like it in one movie, and I hated it in that Annabelle movie,
Yeah.
and I hate it in this movie, I hate it every time I see it.
Hmm.
I don't want. I'm tired of seeing black people die for white people in movies. I don't want to see it
Yes.
anymore. Work your way around it. Luckily, we don't see it. Well, I mean, Annabelle was like within the last decade or so. So
Yeah, that was surprising that they actually did that on that one. I was like, it's too much, it's too new for that.
yeah.
It's too recent. You can't you still doing that? That's what we're still doing? Really?
So I had fun, but it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So yeah, I think I'm
Sure.
gonna do three upside down crosses. So what we do
Okay. Yeah.
now, Rhonda, is I'll ask you for a movie in a similar vein to this, one that you think would do like a good double bill. Um, so I set Rhonda up here. I asked her the question, and then I went ahead and paused the recording. She didn't realize I did, and she gave this whole eloquent response. And then I said, "Oh, I paused it." So I apologize to you, Rhonda, but
It's okay.
because I was unprepared because I didn't have a movie. But yes, if you could please give us a movie, a great double bill with this movie.
I think it matches well with The Purge. They would be good to watch together. So yeah, I know,
Yes,
right? 'Cause I'm like,
I understand.
what were the pretty words? Like, what were the pretty words, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they do happen
That's
in that domestic arena. And so it also shows that people can get really like how close we are to doing certain things when you think you can't get caught. And that's the
yeah,
thing about mental illness is it does offer that freedom, that agency.
yeah. We're all we'll just say we're all the sick bucks, right?
Yeah, we're all $6 here.
Yeah, that's probably the best quote from there. But uh
Yes.
for me, I'm going to suggest the I'm going to ask you to tell me the suggestion again because I forgot.
Next. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes, yes, yes. You're next.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, I am over 100 episodes into this goddamn show and I fuck up all the time. So I apologize. You're next. You're next is a great film. It's earlier, it's young, than this one, obviously. Came out like after 2010, I think, or maybe before,
Mhm.
but great movie, great home invasion movie. So yeah, that's my recommendation. So Rhonda, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me on this again to talk about this movie. If you could please let everybody know again how they could support you, where they can find your work, all that sort of stuff.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Miguel, for having me. Like, I'm really excited that I got a chance to watch this movie and talk with you about it, because it makes it even better. Now I'm going to start bringing it up in conversation all the time. The best way to support me, oh gosh, read the horror books, read all the horror, buy any horror. Yeah, you can buy my books, RJ Joseph, but if you read anything that's horror, I think that's really supporting our genre in ways that mean that we get to continue to do this thing that we love so much.
Great. And she doesn't want to say it, but I will. You can find her at R. Jackson Joseph anywhere on the socials and her website, rhondajacksonjoseph.com. Go on there, buy her books, support her wherever she's going to be selling books and all that sort of stuff. Rhonda, you're amazing. You were so much fun to have on. Thank you very much. Rhonda and I will be continuing our conversation on the Patreon exclusive Sunday, the Patreon exclusive show that I have that I drop every Sunday. So if you'd like to support the show, patreon.com/my horror confessional. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Live spooky, die spooky.